She brought food to a homeless man, daily, unaware he was a disguised millionaire who'd asked for her hand in marriage. "Rebecca, you are not seriously staying here this late again, are you?" Sarah's voice echoed through the dimly lit corridor of the old public library. Her brows were knitted in worry as she peeked out the tall windows at the swirling snow beyond. The streets were already dark, the faint orange glow of the street lamps flickering uncertainly through the thick curtain of flurries. The wind howled outside like a warning call, rattling against the glass as if trying to get in. Rebecca Miller, 30 years old, wrapped in a navy new cardigan and scarf, gave her coworker a faint smile. "I just need a few more minutes. I have some leftover food from the staff kitchen," she said, lifting a small paper bag that carried 2 sandwiches, a muffin, and a small thermos of tea. "You know the usual." Sarah rolled her eyes with a groan. "You and this habit of playing guardian angel. Rebecca, it's freezing out there, worse than yesterday, and this neighborhood? After dark? You are way too kind for your own good." Her voice was sharp, but the concern in her eyes was genuine. "I'll be fine," Rebecca replied, already putting on her coat. 15 minutes tops, then straight home." "You said that last night too," Sarah muttered as she turned toward the exit. "Call me when you get back, will you? Just so I know you didn't freeze into a popsicle out there." Rebecca laughed softly, nodded, then locked up the last section of the library. The long, echoing creak of the heavy oak doors shutting behind her made her shiver. She pulled her scarf higher, stepped outside, and was instantly hit by a gust of icy wind so fierce it stole her breath for a moment. She trudged forward, boots crunching over fresh snow, the cold biting through even her thick coat. Every breath formed little clouds before her face. Her fingers, gripping the bag, began to ache from the chill. The park was just 2 blocks away, and though she longed to be home, curled up with her favorite blanket, there was a quiet, stubborn voice inside her heart that whispered, "Someone is waiting." The park, once a bright place with kids playing and joggers in the morning, was now a silent landscape of snow-draped trees and benches dusted in white. Street lamps cast long shadows, flickering against the wind, their light barely piercing the growing darkness. She had passed by a few homeless people during the past weeks, leaving a sandwich here, a cup of tea there, but there was something about tonight that made the silence heavier. Her boots slipped slightly on an icy patch, and she steadied herself, just as she spotted a figure up ahead, barely visible under a tangle of branches and shadow. A man sat hunched over on a bench, wrapped in tattered clothing, unmoving. Snow had gathered on his shoulders and hair, making him look almost like a statue. Rebecca's heart clenched. How long had he been sitting there in this cold? She looked around cautiously. The park was empty, no one in sight. Still, she approached slowly, every step making a soft crunch in the snow. "Excuse me," she said gently, her voice almost lost in the wind. "Would you like some food?" The man stirred. Slowly he lifted his head, and in the weak yellow light of the street lamp nearby, Rebecca saw his face for the first time. His cheeks were sunken, his beard thick with frost, and his lips tinged blue from the cold, but it was his eyes, dark, deep-set, filled with something she could not name, that stopped her breath. Exhaustion, maybe, or pain, or something worse, the weight of being forgotten. "Food?" he asked, his voice hoarse, raw, like it had not been used in days. "Yes," she said, stepping closer. "Just some sandwiches and hot tea." He looked down at his own hands as though they did not belong to him. When he finally reached out, she noticed the tremor in his fingers. She handed him the bag, and he clutched it tightly, as if afraid it might vanish. For a moment he simply sat there, staring at it. Then, softly, almost in disbelief, he whispered, "I do not remember who I am." Rebecca froze. The sentence hung in the air, sharper than the wind. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do not know my name, where I came from, nothing," he said, looking at her now, those haunted eyes searching hers. "It has been weeks, or months. I just woke up one day in an alley. I had nothing. I was no one." A chill that had nothing to do with the weather crept through Rebecca. She had helped many people before, men and women down on their luck, fighting demons visible and invisible. but never had someone told her they had forgotten themselves. She sat down beside him, ignoring the cold seeping through her coat from the snow-covered bench. "Then I'll call you James," she said softly, "just so we can talk. I'm Rebecca." The man blinked, almost like a child hearing his name for the first time. "James," he repeated. "That sounds okay." She poured some tea from the thermos into a small cup and handed it to him. His hands shook as he took it, and when the warmth hit his lips, he closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. "I did not think anyone would ever see me again." Rebecca placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Everyone deserves to be seen." They sat in silence as snow drifted around them like stars falling from the sky. And though she had come only to give a meal, Rebecca knew deep inside that tonight was different, that something had begun, something she did not yet understand. The next evening, just as the sky turned an inky shade of blue and the city lights blinked to life, Rebecca was once again at the park. The paper bag in her hands carried 2 freshly made sandwiches, a small container of hot soup, and a thermos of tea. Her breath came in soft clouds as she made her way down the familiar path, past the quiet duck pond now frozen over, past the old bench beneath the tall elm tree, his bench, and there he was, James. He sat a little straighter than the night before, wrapped in an old army coat someone must have given him. The snow from yesterday had melted off his shoulders, and though his hands were still raw from the cold, he looked slightly more alert. "You came back," he said, his voice less hoarse this time. Rebecca smiled as she handed him the bag. "Of course I did." Over the next week, and then the next, it became their ritual. After work, Rebecca would gather leftovers from the library's small cafe, sometimes stop by a nearby diner to buy something warm, and head to the park. James was always there, always waiting, sometimes sitting quietly, sometimes pacing nervously, but always there. They talked. At first, it was mostly Rebecca who spoke, about her job, about books, about growing up in a small town before moving to the city. Slowly, James began to open up too, not with details of his past. He still had no memory of where he came from, but with fragments of thoughts, observations, reflections. "You know," he said one evening as they sat with the thermos between them, "the way the snow gathers on those branches, it reminds me of a Japanese print I once saw, hokusai perhaps. The precision of it, the quiet." Rebecca turned to him, surprised. "You know hokusai?" James blinked. "I think so. The name just feels familiar, like a sound I used to hear often." Another night, she brought him a battered copy of a philosophy book someone had donated to the library. He leafed through it slowly, then paused on a chapter about existentialism. Sartre once said, "We are our choices." He looked up at her, eyes glinting with something like clarity. "Maybe I do not remember my past because it does not matter. Maybe who I am is who I choose to be now." Rebecca was struck speechless. The man sitting beside her might have looked worn and forgotten by the world, but there was a sharpness to him, a sensitivity, an intelligence that couldn't be buried by rags or cold. Sometimes they laughed. Once she brought him a thermos of cocoa, and he wrinkled his nose dramatically after the first sip. "You have insulted the noble bean," he joked, and Rebecca burst out laughing. "Hey, that's the good kind, store-brand gourmet," she replied, nudging him playfully. Over time, Rebecca began to notice things she had not expected. The way her heart beat faster when she saw him waiting, the calm that settled over her after their conversations, the way her day felt incomplete without his quiet voice beside her. She told herself it was compassion, empathy, but deep down she knew it was something more. Then one night he was not there. The bench was empty. The snow had started falling again, thick and fast, and the cold was biting even through her coat. She looked around, called his name, walked the perimeter of the park. No sign of James. Panic gripped her chest. Had he fallen? Been taken away? Had the cold claimed him? She walked faster now, ignoring the sting in her fingers, scanning the shadows beneath every tree. Finally, near a cluster of hedges beyond the usual path, she saw something, someone, curled against the trunk of a tree. "James!" He did not answer. She dropped beside him, shaking his shoulders. His skin was icy, lips trembling, breath shallow. The bag of food still clutched weakly in one hand, unopened. Without hesitation, she pulled off her coat and wrapped it around him, her fingers fumbling for her phone. But he stirred then, just slightly, murmuring something incoherent. "James, stay with me," she whispered urgently. "You have to stay awake." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come tonight. Thought maybe I had dreamed you." Rebecca's throat tightened. "Don't say that. I'm here. I'm right here." She managed to help him up, supporting most of his weight as she led him slowly toward a nearby church that stayed open for shelter on cold nights. Every step was a struggle, every breath visible in the frozen air. But they made it. As she sat beside him in the warm, dim room later that night, watching him sleep on a donated cot, Rebecca realized something undeniable. She was no longer just helping a stranger. She cared about him, and she could not bear the thought of losing him. The snow had begun to melt as winter waned, replaced by gray skies and icy rain. But Rebecca still came every evening. The ritual was no longer about charity. It had become something sacred, something she needed as much as he did. That night, as she turned the familiar corner into the park, the scent of something warm and surprisingly delicious drifted through the air. She paused, blinking through the drizzle. There, by the bench under the elm, James had set up a tiny, battered camping stove. A small pot sat atop it, steam curling into the damp night, like a promise of comfort. He stood beside it awkwardly, hands shoved into his sleeves, his coat still patched and weathered, but his posture different, proud, almost nervous. "You're early," he said as she approached. "I couldn't wait to see you," she replied, then caught herself. "I mean, it's been a long day." James gave a small, sheepish smile and motioned to the pot. I managed to get my hands on this little stove, traded an old watch for it. One of the shelter workers gave me vegetables yesterday. So I thought tonight, maybe I could feed you." Rebecca blinked, stunned. "You? Cooked?" He nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "It's just soup, nothing fancy. But I wanted to do something for you, for once. You've brought me food, warmth, kindness, for weeks. I wanted you to have something back." Touched beyond words, she sat beside him, accepting the steaming cup he poured with trembling hands. The soup was simple, potatoes, carrots, a hint of herbs, but it was perfect. It tasted like thoughtfulness, like care, like him. "It's wonderful," she said sincerely. James visibly relaxed, and for a while they sat in silence, sharing the meal. The drizzle became heavier, and soon the rain began to pelt down in earnest. "Come on," he said, grabbing the pot and stove quickly. "There's an old gardener's shed nearby. It's not much, but at least it's dry." Rebecca followed him, giggling as her hair plastered to her face. The shed was small and smelled faintly of wood and old tools, but it was shelter. They sat close on the floor, wrapped in the shared warmth of his blanket. "I'm sorry," James murmured, wiping his wet sleeves over his face. "This isn't exactly fine dining." "It's perfect," Rebecca said softly. "And so are you." James turned his head sharply. His eyes searched hers. "You don't even know who I am." "You're James," she replied without hesitation. "That's who you are to me." He looked away. The rain pounded above them, creating a rhythm against the metal roof that filled the silence between words. "Sometimes I wonder," he said at last, voice low, "if it's better this way. Not remembering. Just being here. With you. No past, no lies, no mistakes. Just James. Just now." Rebecca reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. "Then be James. Stay James. Whoever you were before, doesn't matter if this," she gestured between them, "is real." He looked down at their hands, then slowly closed his fingers around hers. The touch was tentative, uncertain, but it carried weight. "You're not afraid?" he asked. "I should be," she whispered, "but I'm not." A moment passed. Then James moved closer, slowly, as if afraid he might scare her away. But she didn't pull back. Instead, she let herself lean into him, let the warmth of his presence wrap around her like the blanket they shared. He held her, not possessively, not desperately, but gently, as if he were afraid to break the moment. His arms were strong, but there was a trembling in his hold, a vulnerability that made her heart ache. They sat like that for what felt like an eternity. The storm raged outside, but inside the tiny shed, the world was still, safe, whole. It was in that embrace that Rebecca felt something shift deep within her. The connection she'd tried to explain as kindness, as routine as friendship, none of that was enough anymore. She had fallen for him, not for who he had been or might be, but for the man who brought her soup in the rain. The man who remembered poetry but not his name. The man who had lost everything but still tried to give. "I've never done this," James murmured into her hair. "Not like this, not without knowing what comes next." Rebecca smiled against his shoulder. "Then don't think about what comes next. Just be here." His arms tightened around her for a moment. Then they loosened, and he pulled back just enough to look into her face. "Rebecca," he said softly, "I don't know what I did to deserve you." She brushed her fingers against his cheek. "Maybe you don't have to earn it. Maybe we just found each other." His eyes glistened, but he said nothing more. He did not have to. That night, long after the rain stopped, they left the shed together, still wrapped in silence, but hearts forever changed. Rebecca knew then she loved him. The night was unusually quiet. Rebecca had just finished tidying up after a long shift at the library. Her tea had gone cold beside her, forgotten as she sank into the couch in her small apartment, flipping through the TV channels absent-mindedly. Outside, the wind whispered through the city streets, carrying with it a sense of something about to shift. She stopped on the evening news. "Still no updates on the mysterious disappearance of tech mogul Matthew Kane," the anchor reported, his tone measured but dramatic. "The CEO of Kane Tech vanished without a trace nearly 2 months ago, following a high-sped car accident on a remote mountain road. Despite extensive searches, his body was never recovered. New speculation has arisen due to a possible sighting in a downtown district last week. Authorities have released this image." The screen flashed a photograph. Rebecca froze. It was him. Or it looked like him. She leaned forward, heart pounding. The man in the photo was cleaned up, dressed in a tailored suit, standing at a press event. But the jawline, the eyes, the shape of his mouth, it was uncanny. Her stomach twisted. It was James. No, it was Matthew Kane? She grabbed her phone, quickly searched the name. More images filled the screen. Board meetings, speaking events, charity galas, all featuring the same face. Her James, but in another life. A tremor ran through her. She printed one of the clearer photos at the library the next morning, hiding it between the pages of a book. All day she could barely focus. Her thoughts spun. Who is he, really? Was he dangerous? Why doesn't he remember? But underneath the fear was something deeper. Grief. If James truly was Matthew Kane, the man she had fallen in love with was someone else entirely. And yet, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was still him, just lost. That evening she made her way to the park, the photo pressed tightly in her coat pocket. James was there, sitting quietly, sketching something into the frost on the bench's wooden armrest. He looked up and smiled when he saw her, but his smile faded quickly when he noticed the look on her face. "Rebecca, what's wrong?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat beside him, took a shaky breath, and handed him the folded paper. "I need you to look at this." James unfolded it, slowly, like someone opening a door they feared was booby-trapped. His eyes scanned the image. He did not react at first, but then his hand began to tremble. "Is this—" "It's you," she said softly. "Or it could be." He looked again, then again. His breathing grew erratic. His voice broke. "I have seen this suit. I've dreamed of it. I've dreamed of glass buildings and a woman screaming. Then, headlights. I thought it was just a nightmare." Rebecca touched his arm. James, do you remember anything else? He looked at her, eyes wide with panic. I was in a car, nighttime. Someone was chasing me. I heard voices, arguing. They said I knew too much, that I needed to be silenced. And then I woke up in an alley, bruised and cold and bleeding. No wallet, no name. She swallowed hard. James, I think you're Matthew Kane, a tech CEO, a missing millionaire. People think you're dead. He stood abruptly, pacing. No, that can't be. That person, that life. I don't remember it. I don't want to remember it. He clutched the photo like it might burn through his fingers. Rebecca stood too, watching him carefully. But it's your face, your name. You're not just anyone. I don't care, he snapped, then immediately softened. I'm sorry, I'm scared. I finally feel something real here, with you. If I go back to that life, what if it swallows me? What if I lose this, what we have? Rebecca reached for his hands. Then let's take it slow. We don't have to go to the police, not yet. But James, if your past comes looking, we need to be ready. His gaze dropped to the snow between them. All this time, I thought I was nobody. But maybe I ran away from somebody I couldn't be anymore. Someone I hated. You don't know that. I don't know anything, he whispered. There was a long silence. Then he met her eyes, and his voice steadied. Even if I was Matthew Kane, I don't want to be him again. I want to be James, the man who waited in the cold for you, the man who made you soup. Rebecca smiled faintly through the storm of emotions. Then you're James. To me, you've always been James. He looked down at the photo again, then folded it carefully and placed it back in her hand. I trust you, he said. You are the only part of this world that feels safe. As the wind picked up around them and the snow began to fall again, they stood together beneath the flickering park lamp, two people caught in the middle of a truth too big to understand, but holding on to the only thing they could, each other. It began with a photo. Someone had snapped them in the park, Rebecca handing James a cup of tea, her fingers brushing his arm. An innocent moment, but one the world interpreted differently. The next morning, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She dismissed the first few calls until she saw the headline, Missing Tech Mogul Found, Woman Believed to be Caring for Disguised Millionaire. The article featured a grainy image of Matthew, on a bench beside her. Another showed Rebecca outside the library. The caption hit her like a blow. Local librarian may be key in Matthew Kane's disappearance. By noon, reporters swarmed the library. They lined the steps, pointed cameras in her face, and fired off questions. Miss Miller, how long have you known him? Did you know he was Matthew Kane? Are you in love with a billionaire? Rebecca kept her head down, forcing her way through the chaos, but her quiet world had shattered. She was no longer just Rebecca Miller. She was the woman who saved a millionaire. Meanwhile, Matthew's face was everywhere, on screens and papers on phones. His past, once buried under frost and silence, was erupting. The board of Kane Tech sent men in dark suits to the park, urging him to return. We need you. The company needs you. He felt the ground shift beneath him. His memories were patchy, his identity unsteady, but the pressure of expectation was unmistakable. The name Matthew Kane came with weight, and now there was no more hiding from it. That evening he stood at Rebecca's door. She opened it slowly, eyes searching his face. You've seen it, he said. She nodded. They're outside. They won't stop, he stepped in, but didn't sit. They want me back, Kane Tech, my old life. I don't even know who that is anymore. You don't have to go if you're not ready, she said gently. But I am already out there, he replied, voice tight. They know who I am, and now they know who you are. You're caught in this because of me. I'm not afraid of them, she said. You should be, he whispered. You didn't fall for a billionaire, you fell for James, the man with no name, no past. Her eyes welled. He's still here. He shook his head. He disappeared the moment the world remembered me. She stepped closer, touched his chest. Don't push me away. But he stepped back. They'll dig into your life. They'll twist everything. You deserve peace. I can't give that to you. A painful silence stretched between them. "So, are you leaving?" she asked, barely audible. "I need to figure this out before I drag you down with me." He opened the door. Rain fell softly outside. "Please, don't shut me out," she whispered. He paused, eyes full of sorrow. "I'll come back, if I still have the right to." Then he was gone. She stood alone in the doorway, the room behind her too quiet, the world outside too loud. In the days that followed, her life shrank. Everywhere she went, whispers followed. The library was no longer her haven. Some patrons offered kindness, others offered cruel judgment. She smiled through it all, buried herself in work, but nothing filled the space James had left. Matthew had returned to Kane Tech. The headlines called it a miracle. Photos showed him in sleek suits again, seated at board meetings, flanked by corporate elites. But Rebecca saw the hollow in his eyes. At first, they spoke on the phone, brief, careful calls, every few days, then once a week, then less. "Everything's happening so fast," he would say. "They want me to be the man I used to be." "Are you?" she'd ask. "I don't know. I still feel like James, but no one here understands that." She tried to be strong. She told him to take his time, but with every call his voice sounded further away. She missed the man who once lit up at the sound of her footsteps, who made her soup, who waited on a bench just to see her face. Now he lived in a world of suits and speeches, a world where she did not belong. One evening she sat on that same bench, now surrounded by budding trees and soft spring air. She carried a letter in her coat pocket, a note she'd written but never sent. "I miss your quiet. I miss the man who didn't need to be anyone but mine, but maybe the world needs you more than I do." She never mailed it. Weeks passed, then months. The last time they spoke, he sounded exhausted, distant. "I'm sorry I haven't called. There's just been so much." "I understand," she said softly. "I miss you," he whispered. The line went quiet before she could reply. Now she sat at her kitchen table, flipping through a book he once read aloud under the stars. She could still hear his voice, but it felt like a memory now, soft, flickering, fading. Maybe their love was always meant to live in the quiet, a fleeting miracle during a winter storm. She stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through her tears. Her reflection stared back, a woman who had loved with her whole heart and lost. A knock startled her. It was only her neighbor, asking if she was all right. Rebecca smiled, nodded, closed the door quietly, then leaned against it, hand on her chest. "Maybe it was just a moment in time," she whispered. A pause, then a small, aching smile. "But I don't regret it, not 1 second." She picked up a pen and began to write, not for him, not for the world, but for herself. She wrote to remember, to hold on to the truth that had defined her winter, because what they had was real, and for her, that was enough. It was a quiet Thursday morning at the library. Rebecca had just finished shelving a stack of books and was preparing for the children's reading hour. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting soft gold across the wooden floor. On the surface, everything felt calm, but inside, a part of her still waited. Though the headlines had faded, the memory of James Matthew remained. She hadn't heard from him in months. She told herself to move on. Still, every time the door creaked open, a small part of her heart looked up, and this time he was there. She looked up and froze. Matthew Kane stood in the doorway, not in a suit or behind a podium, but in a plain navy coat, hair slightly tousled, expression quiet and vulnerable. In his hands he held an old book, one of the classics she loved. He stepped toward her slowly. Visitors turned. Hushed murmurs filled the room. Rebecca could barely breathe. He placed the book on the counter. "May I speak to you?" She nodded, unable to find her voice. He opened the book. Inside, the pages had been cut out, forming a hidden space. In it was a small velvet box. Gasps echoed softly. Matthew picked it up and knelt down. Silence. "When I met you, I had no name, no past, no future," he said, voice trembling. "But you gave me warmth. You gave me the name James, and in that I found myself. You didn't ask for anything in return, and somehow you gave me everything." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I remember it all now," he continued, "for the life I had, the mistakes, the pressure, but none of it ever mattered like you did. I don't want to be Matthew Kane anymore. I want to be James, the man who made you laugh in the cold and waited each night to see your face." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a single diamond. "I want to be yours. Rebecca Miller, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. She nodded, barely able to whisper, "Yes, yes, I will." Applause broke out across the library, soft and heartfelt. Matthew slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. The room faded. It was just them. "I'm never leaving again," he whispered. She touched his face, as if confirming he was real. "You really came back?" "I had to. When I had everything, I was lost. But when I had nothing, I had you. And that was everything." "I missed you every day," she said. "I missed you every breath," he replied. Later, as they sat on the steps outside the library, the world resumed around them. Cameras flashed, passers-by whispered, but none of it mattered. Matthew leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. "So, fiancé?" Rebecca laughed through her tears. "Only if I can still call you James," he smiled, eyes soft. "Forever." They were married in the same library where he had once proposed. It was a small ceremony, just close friends, colleagues, and a few patrons who had witnessed their journey unfold. Rebecca wore a simple ivory dress with lace sleeves, her hair down, soft curls brushing her shoulders. Matthew stood beside her in a tailored but modest suit, no tie, just a quiet smile that never left his face. There were no paparazzi, no grand venue or lavish party, just laughter, heartfelt vows, and tears of joy. As they exchanged rings, surrounded by books and memories, the past no longer held power over them. They had written their own story, page by page, in kindness, in struggle, and in love. After the wedding, they began something new. Together they launched the James Project, named not after Matthew's real identity, but after the man he had become when he had nothing. It was his way of honoring the life that had taught him what truly mattered. The James Project focused on helping the homeless reclaim their dignity and rebuild their lives. It offered not just meals and temporary shelter, but long-term support, mental health counseling, job training, identification services, and transitional housing. Rebecca, with her compassion and quiet strength, became the heart of it. Matthew, using his resources and business acumen, became its backbone. What started as a single community center in their city soon expanded across the state, then nationwide. Volunteers poured in. Formerly homeless individuals became mentors for others. Stories of second chances echoed through the halls of every shelter they opened. "We don't just give people a bed," Rebecca said once during a fundraiser. "We give them a name, a voice, and the hope that tomorrow can be different." Matthew watched her with pride that night. The woman who once brought a sandwich to a man with no past had become the spark of a movement. Years passed. They moved into a cozy home, not too big, not too small, a place filled with books and laughter and quiet Sunday mornings. Their daughter, Emily, grew up hearing the story of how her parents met. She called it the Snow Story, and often asked to visit the park where it all began. On the 20th anniversary of the James Project, the family returned to that same park bench. Matthew had gray in his hair now, and his hands moved a little slower. Rebecca wore glasses, her curls streaked with silver. Emily, now a young woman, walked between them, arms looped through theirs. The bench was still there, slightly worn but sturdy. They sat in silence for a moment. Matthew reached for Rebecca's hand. "It all started here," he whispered. She smiled. "With a sandwich and a name." Emily sat at their feet, looking up at them with wonder. "Do you think it was fate?" she asked. Rebecca glanced at her husband before replying. "I think it was kindness, one simple act. That's all it took to change everything." Matthew nodded. "Never underestimate what one small moment can become." The sun dipped behind the trees, casting golden light across the park. Birds sang above. The bench, once a place of cold and despair, was now a symbol of redemption. As they rose to leave, Rebecca glanced back once more. "Thank you," she thought. "Thank you for the night I almost stayed home, for the snow, for the stranger who became my life." She turned to her daughter and took her hand. "Remember this," she said gently. "Never underestimate the power of kindness. It can change an entire life." Emily nodded, her eyes shining, and together they walked on, leaving behind the bench, but never the story. And so ends the incredible journey of Rebecca and James, two souls who found each other not through wealth or status, but through compassion, resilience, and the quiet, unwavering power of kindness. Their story reminds us that even the smallest gesture can spark a transformation, that love often blooms in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes giving someone a name is the same as giving them a second chance at life. If this story touched your heart, made you believe in the magic of human connection, or reminded you of the beauty in everyday kindness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Join our growing family of listeners who believe in the healing power of storytelling. Here, you'll find tales that inspire, comfort, and remind you that hope is never truly lost. Thank you for being here, and remember, a single act of kindness can change everything. See you in the next story.